It started on a Tuesday. It was a Tuesday like any other Tuesday. I had a hangover. I had about 4 hours sleep and my mouth tasted like... You know how my mouth tasted. All of this was normal, except the weather. Some days it rained. But the mouth was the same, so was the 4 hours sleep, so was the hangover.
Can I help you, sir?
I'm Joe Harris, honey. I work here.
Excuse me, Mr. Harris. I just started here this morning. I'll have to start getting familiar with the talent on the station.
I'd enjoy that.
Hello? Mr. Moore wanted to know as soon as Mr. Harris got back. He just came in.
Hiya, sexy.
Thank you.
Sid Moore's been on the phone all morning. He's sorry about your play review last night.
Isn't that too bad?
He said he saw the play last night, too, and he thinks you were unnecessarily rough on it.
Gee, that's too bad.
You're real clever this morning.
Dear Joe Harris, I listen to your program every night. What an exciting life you must lead. All the theatrical openings, all the parties. 1 minute sitting at ringside for a championship fight, the next racing across town to cover a fire or a murder. I don't usually write fan letters,
But I just had to let you know how much I enjoy listening to you.
Signed?
One of your faithful listeners.
You read it.
I wrote it. You want me to get Sid Moore for you?
You bet I do. I'm going to give him an earful today.
Same old thing?
Same old thing. I used to be a reporter, remember? I used to be able to sink my teeth into a story. That's how I made my name in this town, carting a mini-tape around to hospital wards and night court, to fires and murders. Now what do? Nightclub gossip, chit-chat. No controversy. It's an election year. Do you ever hear anything so stupid in your life? I'm a reporter, but I can't be controversial because it's an election year. Man with my rating could walk into NBC.
Where have you been? What?
A man with his rating could
You
walk
find a
into
minute tape and get it loaded. We gotta get out of here.
What are you talking about?
Gordon's in a car waiting downstairs. I got 2 reservations on the next plane to Hartford.
Hartford?
Yeah, I told that jerk. I told him, but no, he had to make like Barney Oldfield.
Who?
Herb Fuller. He plowed that fancy souped-up jalopy of his right into a railroad embankment outside of Hartford.
Is he dead?
Not yet. They've got him in the hospital. But when he comes to, I want you there with that recorder. If he dies, we may have to do a memorial show on him. Now, you've been wanting to make like a reporter. Now's your chance. Come on, let's go.
Okay. Take it easy, will you?
Dr. O'Connor?
Mr. Moore, how do you do?
Mr. Harris?
Harris, doctor. You were a close personal friend of Mr. Fuller's as well as a business associate, weren't you?
Yes.
Please sit down. Would you care to contact his wife, or would you want us to do it?
He's dead?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you knew. Yes, he died a little less than an hour ago. Frankly, Mr. Moore, he didn't have a chance. It's a miracle that he was still alive when they got him here. I don't think there was a bone in his body that wasn't broken.
I hope you won't misunderstand what I'm about to say, Doctor. Herb Fuller was more than a business associate. We both feel a keen sense of personal loss. And I'm sure that every American who ever laughed at him or chuckled with him or was moved by his simple humanity will have lost a great friend today.
Well, I suppose you might say that, Mr. Moore.
The Amalgamated Broadcasting System will want to do a memorial show on Herb, coast to coast. A tribute to a great man. And Mr. Harris here, who was privileged to know Herb better than most of us, will narrate it.
Yes, I want to talk to the state trooper, the ambulance driver, the nurse, everybody who had anything at all to do with the accident.
See, Doctor, what we want to ask you is this. Could you tell us if there were any final words? Did he say anything before he passed on? Oh, now, don't let that microphone frighten you, Doctor. If it isn't right the first time, we can always do it over again. And what you do say will be heard coast to coast.
Well, it isn't really that, Mr. Moore. It's just that I don't think you'd be interested in what he had to say.
Well, now, Doctor, don't you think we should be the judge of that?
All right. It was just before we gave him the transfusion. He was mumbling. Kept trying to say something, so I leaned over. Then, just before he died, he said one word.
What was it?
He said, well, I don't think you can put it on a memorial broadcast coast to coast, Mr. Moore.
Doctor, please.
Do you ever read fences or the walls in public places, Mr. Moore?
What?
Yes, well, it was one of those words. He used it several times.
Well, thank you very much, Doctor. Let's go. I found him. He was a small-timer and nothing working on a 200-watt station outside of Boston. I brought him down to New York. I shoved him down their throats. I wet-nursed him. I bottle-fed him. I created him. Out of a 2-bit station in Worcester, Mass. I created him. And when the payoff came, they benched me. Well, I'm back in the lineup now. Maybe finally I'll make it big on Mr. Fuller.
How?
How? He had a pot full of radio and TV shows, right?
Right.
Well, all those shows are going to be up for grabs. Somebody's going to have to do them. Maybe you. Why do you think I had you take that tape recorder and microphone along?
To record the sound of the splash as you siphon out the last drop of the great man's blood.
No smoking, please. We'll be landing in a few minutes.
I had Gordon notify all the newspapers about our little journey, so there'll probably be some newspaper reporters at the airport. So you keep your trap shut. Put a solemn look on your kisser and curb your natural instinct to smile in their lenses.
We came to berry season, not to laugh at it.
Listen, wise guy, listen. Will you just stop being smart for a minute and listen to old Coach Sid? You have just become official chief mourner, grief-stricken intimate pal, and maybe even pallbearer for your good, true, and intimate friend, Herb Fuller.
You know how intimate Herb Fuller and I were? I used to deliver his mail when I was the fastest mail boy Amalgamated ever had.
Yeah, well, from now on, he's the best friend you ever had in the whole world. He was the first one to put you on radio, and you're not ashamed to wear that black silk band on your arm in his memory.
The black silk comes off the expense account?
You play it right, and I'll up the ante into the stratosphere.
Only a few hours ago. And so I packed up my recorder and caught a plane back to New York, leaving behind in a sterile, white-tiled morgue in Hartford, Connecticut, the mortal remains of a man I knew, admired, respected, and, sure, I'm not ashamed to say it, loved. As you knew, admired, respected, and loved him. A big story, the death of Herb Fuller. A big story, and the saddest story I ever covered. Good night. How was it?
As a broadcast or as a human document?
Both.
Well, as a broadcast, it was great. As a human document,
You're a cynic.
Sid Moore called while you were on the air. He wants you to come right up to Carleton's office.
Carleton's office?
You're moving in pretty exalted circles these days.
Carleton's office, eh?
That's what the man said. Put in a good word with the great white father.
Carleton's office, well, what do you know?
Simple but expensive. Thanks for coming, Joe.
Sid?
Harry Connors, Vice President in charge of Public Relations.
Joe?
Charlie Carruthers, Program Director for the network.
Right.
Brothers?
Nick Celentano, Herb's Public Relations man.
Nick.
Joe?
And, of course, Phil Carleton, President of Amalgamated.
Make yourself comfortable, Mr. Harris.
Thank you.
Joe, I'm sure it's as obvious to you as it was obvious to the rest of us that we couldn't just bury Herb like that. The people wouldn't want it that way. Well, first off, we came up with St. Patrick's Cathedral, and most of us felt it was ideal. It's large, centrally located, and, well, you know, it does have a certain dignity. We thought to have Herb lie in state for a couple of days like that place in England, Westminster Abbey. They wouldn't buy it. They're very nice about it, but they just wouldn't buy it. Besides, Herb wasn't a Catholic. Oh, by the way, Harry, did you ever find out what Herb was?
I don't think you could honestly say he was much of anything.
Well, after we vetoed St. Patrick's Cathedral, we kicked around a couple of ideas, and finally we came up with one. Yankee Stadium. The Polo Grounds was out because the Giants are home this week. Then after a while, we realized that that wouldn't be quite dignified enough, and we canceled out Madison Square Garden for the same reason. Then Harry here came up with a perfect idea. Studio 41.
You know that old movie house over on the east side? The carpenters are tearing it apart right now and rebuilding it. They'll be working all night. And by morning, we'll have a chapel with stained glass windows, the works. We'll move in the coffin and open it to the public daily from 9 to 5. We've arranged for a change of flowers every 4 hours. There'll be spot announcements every half hour. And by the middle of the morning, the place should be jammed. Charlie, fill Joe in on your end of it.
Well, the religious department has set up a rotating schedule of choirs, all denominations. It's a plus that Herb wasn't identified with any particular creed. There'll be singing groups working all day. The mic will be hidden in the flower beds. Our TV is cleared 15 minutes a day from now on until the funeral Saturday morning. And we'll have a different distinguished speaker in every day delivering a eulogy. How many stations have we cleared for it, Harry?
54 up to now. The rest will come in line.
It's our feeling that this whole thing must have a great deal of dignity to it. We can't make a circus out of Fuller's memory.
And to be mercenary for a moment, the amount of billing he's represented to this network.
That's right, Harry.
Now, Joe, let's get around to you.
Sid, as you probably know, has no right being in this setup. No offense, Sid. But he's local. And on the surface, this is a network operation. However, the thinking seems to be that since Sid found Fuller in the first place, and since he has a certain claim to attention that I won't go into here, we'd bring him into the picture. And he brought you into the picture. Sid was all for moving you right into Fuller's shows immediately. I'm against that. Sid's a good boy. I like Sid, but I'm still running this network.
Oh, no, I didn't mean it that way, Phil. It was just a suggestion.
That's all right, Sid. I'm not trying to chastise you. I'm just being blunt and frank. I'm all for keeping Joe Harris on her wraps for a while. I'm not unaware of your talents, Joe, but as of now, you don't have the stature to step into Fuller's shoes. Do us all a lot of harm to overlook that fact. You're big in New York, but do I have to remind you, New York is not America. And we have to prepare them for Harris, give him a leg up the saddle. Charlie, you want to take it from there?
All right, Harris, this is the way it goes. We've cleared the full network for a special memorial program on Friday night at 10. Now, our original idea was to put on an all-star show like the cancer and heart benefits, every big name in the business. But Sid here sold us on you instead, on the grounds of your close personal relationship with Fuller.
Joe and I were pretty broken up when we left that hospital. We talked a lot. Joe, why don't you tell him what you told me on the way back from Hartford?
Well, I'd like to do something simple because I think that was Herb Fuller's basic appeal. He was the common man amplified. If you're a skinny little runt, you can't kid yourself into thinking that you look like Tony Curtis, and you know that Jane Russell wouldn't give you a second look. But with Herb Fuller, it was different. He was just like you, so you could identify yourself with him. He was everybody's husband or brother who once in a while tells an off-color story or gets a little loaded at a party and puts a lampshade on his head. I got where I am the hard way, by finding a story and digging into it. I'd like to go back to being a reporter instead of just doing a benefit with a lot of stars. I'd like to get my tape machine and talk to the people that knew Herb, come up with an intimate picture, a portrait in sound of a great man. I think Herb Fuller would have liked that kind of memorial.
I'll buy it.
All right, Phil.
I'll buy it.
Wonderful.
Okay, Harris, it's your baby. You're on your own. Nick will turn over to you all the bio material on Fuller.
Nick?
Joe? Call on anybody at Amalgamated for anything you need.
Thank you, Mr.
I'll cancel out your show for the rest of the week. I'll
Relax,
throw on a
man.
disc jockey with some records. You better get on home. You're going to need some sleep.
Nick, I'll see you in the morning.
Right.
Thank you all very much, and I'll try to do my best.
I'll walk down the elevator.
Good. Well,
Just a minute.
what?
You sit down over here a minute.
Now what?
This is our marriage license. I don't call signals or open up any holes in the line for you to go through until you sign this contract.
Suppose I don't sign it.
Well, then, like the man says, we'll put on an all-star benefit type show Friday night, and you'll be back on the nightclub beat. Want you gonna read it?
What for?
That's a good boy. You go home and get some sleep. I better get back in there.
Oh, yes, here's the official bio on Herb Fuller. This is the first piece I ever filed. Just don't try and verify any of it.
Nick, I thought I'd go up to Connecticut and get a tape with Fran and the kids.
Well, that's fine. It's a good idea.
What's she like?
Fran? Oh, she's a good kid. She'll give you exactly the kind of tapes that you want.
What kind of a marriage was that, anyway?
Well, you know, Fran liked being Mrs. Herb Fuller, and after the marriage stopped being a marriage, she still wouldn't give him a divorce. She gave him a long leash, though. And as long as nothing got in the paper to jeopardize her place as wife of America's beloved humorist, she was satisfied.
Thought maybe I'd do some tapes with Eddie.
Eddie?
Some of the boys in the band, maybe.
Yeah, Eddie in the band. You know, Eddie's one of the few people in the world who really liked Herb. Except, of course, the 150 million members of the Great Unwashed. They adored him.
What about Carol?
Joe. Now, lay off Carol. She's hitting the bottle again, and she's still sore at Herb over that last set, too.
What happened?
Believe me, you couldn't use it on the air. You couldn't even use it on the telephone.
How'd you get mixed up with Fuller in the first place?
Law of supply and demand. I needed a job. He needed a press agent.
Did you like him?
He was the great man, wasn't he?
Didn't you like him?
Well, that wasn't what I was hired for. I just worked for him. 150 million people liked him. One word from him, they'd change their toothpaste, their cigarettes, their shirts, maybe even their politics.
Herb's brand?
No, this is a different brand. Man has to retain a little integrity somewhere along the line. 2 bits for a pack of cigarettes that Fuller doesn't advertise. That's a pretty good buy on the integrity market.
Nick, how do you think I ought to start in on this thing? What do you think I ought to do first?
Well, Joe, I don't think you have any trouble. You've got enough junk in that pile to fill the New York Times from the first page right through to the real estate section. I think you're crazy if you don't bat it out from the clips. The trouble with Fuller is that you're going to sit down and talk to people that knew him. They're going to start talking, and you're going to be fascinated. But you won't hear a thing that you can use in the air. Then all of a sudden, you're going to wake up Friday night at 10 o'clock and you won't have a show. Just remember that you're doing an obit. And nobody says anything bad about anybody in an obit.
Thanks, Nick. Now, look, I want you to call the tape room and get me a good engineer. See if you can spring Mike Jackson. Oh, start calling the Fuller gang and set up appointments for me to do tapes with them. The band leader, Eddie Brand, Carol Larson, anybody else you can think of. And dig through the Fuller tapes and see what you can find. Any kid stuff. Something about that dog of his. Oh, and the famous blood bank broadcast. You know the kind of stuff I want.
Right. Eddie Brand is in a recording session. He'll drop by this afternoon or tomorrow. I couldn't reach Carol, so I left a message with her answering service.
Okay.
Yes.
Jenny, I'm getting a backache from pounding this typewriter. Bring in your pad and I'll dictate the rest.
Okay.
And so Herb Fuller brought them together. Eddie Brand, the orchestra leader, Carol Larson, the singer, all the people and all the talents that went to make up the Fuller family. And they were a family with all the warmth and strength and togetherness of a family.
All the warmth and strength and what?
Togetherness.
Togetherness.
Yeah, togetherness.
May I say something?
Sure.
Wow.
It'll play, Jenny. You know, I still haven't got an idea for a finish. I need something with impact and sock.
Well, maybe you could have him declare war, or invent a vaccine, or discover Mother's Day.
You ever run into Fuller?
Once. I was drafted out of the typist pool one day when Smitty was sick.
And?
You want to see my Purple Heart?
The best offer I've had today. What happened?
He made a pass at me. A sort of reflex action type pass. I disappeared back into the typist pool while I was still considering it. I would probably... Joe Harris's office. Just a moment. The old gray skipper of Coogan's Bluff.
Yeah, Sid.
I forgot to tell you, Fran Fuller isn't coming down to New York.
She isn't what?
She isn't coming down to New York.
Well, now, that's just dandy. How am I supposed to do a memorial show without the bereaved widow sobbing her way through a music cue? And how's it going to look if she doesn't come down for the funeral?
Don't you worry about that. You worry about the show. I'll take care of the rest of it.
Look, since when am I a junior partner?
Well, that's exactly what you are, kid. There's going to be a few major changes around here, and you might as well get used to it. Number one, I don't want any more wise guy talk from you, not to me anyway. Number two, start thinking of yourself as a glorified howdy-doody out there in front of the audience getting the applause, but just don't forget who's got a hold of the strings. And number three, just remember I can pull that rug out from under your well-shod feet any time I want to. Just don't think you can push me around. Don't get that idea for 3 consecutive seconds.
Okay, Sid.
No, you been up to Studio 41 yet?
No, Sid, I haven't had a chance. I've been up to my ears.
I think you better get up there.
Okay, I'll get up there.
Hey, get some interviews with the slobs. I understand we're jabbing them in. Oh, and I'll have Jaime send a photographer up there. We'll probably get some pictures of you talking to the great unwashed public.
Right, Sid.
All right, goodbye.
Joe, when you take over the Fuller Empire, do I get a raise?
I guess so.
Don't you know?
No, I don't know.
Fuller used to pay the girls himself. He took them off the amalgamated payroll and paid them himself, out of his own pocket.
I'll hit Sid Moore for some more money for you first chance I get.
Say, I was wondering when you'd get here.
I got held up batting out the script.
How about that stained glass window?
Lovely.
We're averaging $250 an hour. If this keeps up, you're going to be the highest-rated corpse in this vital American industry. I've got some booze in the office for the newspaper guys if you want a shot.
Well, I better knock off those tapes first. I don't think the Crown Prince should reek of booze at the royal wake.
Me, I believe in all the ads about chlorophyll. Joe, you mind if I make a suggestion?
Oh, go ahead.
I think we'd better trade ties.
Oh, okay. May I ask you your name, please?
You have to have my name? Why did you stop?
No, you don't have to give me your name if you don't want to.
My name is Mrs. Reber.
Mrs.
Helen Reber.
Helen Reber.
I live at 4.
Yes, I don't have to have your
Why
address.
am I giving it? You know, if you
now,
want it, I really don't mind
Mrs.
at
Reber.
all.
I just want to ask you a few questions. Now, this is a recording machine.
You mean we're on now?
No,
on
no.
the radio?
No,
Me
no,
and you
no.
now?
No. It's just a recording. It will be on the air later on in the week.
Oh, that's nice.
Now, why did you come here today?
Here? I came down with a group of women. We have a club, and we came down together.
Why?
What do you mean, why? Would you mind repeating that question? I mean, we came down together, a group of women, my club. We go lots of places together. We got separated outside in the crowd.
But why did you decide to come here today?
Oh, I see what you mean. I told you, we go places together. We decided this was a place to go together. We used to go to Herb Fuller's broadcast together. My friend knows somebody in the ticket bureau at Amalgamated, and she used to get 16, 18, 20 tickets at a time. Depended on how many women wanted to go together.
How often did you go to the broadcast?
Together, you mean?
Yes, together.
Oh, let me think. It's hard to think when you shove that thing in my face. Every month, every 6 weeks, like that. In my club, we take turns who should be what you might call the entertainment chairman. The entertainment chairman is like the person who decides where we should go together. And when my friend, the one who knows the person who was in the ticket bureau, was chairman, she used to get tickets for all of us to go to the Herb Fuller shows. Sometimes 16, 18, 20, like that. Every month, every 6 weeks, like that.
Did you feel that Herb Fuller was your friend?
My what?
Your friend.
No, I never met him. I never met him in my whole life. I told you. This friend of mine got tickets for his broadcast. We never met him or anything like that.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Reber.
Yeah. I'm on the radio. Next week, he says. That was at the recording.
Excuse me. Did you just come out of the theater, madam?
Yes, I did.
And may I ask why you came here today?
I came to see him. Rest his soul.
You were a fan of his?
I should say I was. I never missed him on radio or television, night or day. I should say I was a fan of his. My heart goes out to his poor wife and those dear children of his.
Would you say that Herb Fuller was your friend?
Friend? A member of the family, you should say.
Why?
Because he was always there with something cheery or something funny to say when you needed him. If your arthritis was bothering you or you had some other kind of trouble, all you had to do was to turn that dial, and there he was. And before you knew it, you forgot your arthritis or whatever was bothering you. He'll be missed, believe me, by a good many.
Thank you very much, Mrs.
Elvira Garrigus.
Thank you, Mrs. Garrigus.
That's a funny-looking microphone. Are you broadcasting now?
No, just recording.
Tape or wire?
Tape. So you're pretty bright.
We are both in school, tape and wire.
How would you two like to go on the air?
Sure, we'd like it.
Now, what's your name?
Mary Brown, with an E on the end. Mount St. Mary's High School.
What's the matter with your friend?
She's not my friend, she's my sister. She's shy.
What's her name?
Helen.
I see. Now, you were inside?
We just came out.
And?
And what? Oh, you mean what was it like? Well, it was nice. I mean, all those flowers and the music and that man up there talking. It gave me a kind of spooky feeling.
Spooky?
Well, you know, like someone was dead.
Someone is dead.
I know that.
Were you fans of Herb Fuller, you and your sister?
Not what you'd really call fans, maybe. Not like, for instance, real fans. I mean, we used to see him on the television once in a while. My mother and father thought he was wonderful. I guess you could say they were fans of his. I mean, he was okay, but we weren't what you could call fans of his. I mean, not like, for instance, like you'd be a fan for a singer like Eddie Fisher, Frank Sinatra, somebody like that. I mean, we didn't dislike him or anything, but it's like we couldn't be fans of, like, well, somebody like that. You know, a middle-aged man. I mean, not that he wasn't nice or funny or so forth.
But you couldn't have a romantic feeling about him, is that it?
I guess so. He was like he was your father if your father's funny, which mine isn't. I mean, you could like him and all that, but you couldn't be a fan of his. See the difference?
Yes, well, if that's the way you feel, what are you doing here today?
My sister didn't want to come. She hates funerals and things like that. I tried to tell her this wasn't like a funeral. It was like an event, like a premiere or something like that. My sister wanted to go to the Paramount. We flipped a coin, quarter, and I won.
They're just going off the air.
Okay, well, thanks. Thanks very much, and thank your sister for me.
She didn't say anything.
Thank her anyway.
You didn't turn your machine off. You're wasting tape.
Oh, thanks.
Just don't edit me out of the broadcast.
Cross my heart.
Big deal.
Joe Harris.
This is Carol Larson.
Oh, hi.
You call me?
I don't know if you remember me. We met a couple of times.
Oh, sure, I remember you. So?
Well, I'm doing a show Friday night, a sort of memorial to Herb. I was wondering when we could get together.
Come on over.
What, now?
Why, sure now.
Okay.
Well, say, you're coming over. You can do me a favor. Stop at the delicatessen and pick up a couple of bottles of soda, large size, and some ice. My refrigerator's on the blink.
Okay.
You might pick up a bottle of scotch while you're at it.
Right.
You know where? River Towers, East 53rd?
Right. Delivery boy.
I remember you now.
Joe Harris.
How are you?
Fine.
Come in. I hope you like scotch.
Oh, sure. I drink anything.
You like it plain, or with soda, or with water?
Doesn't matter.
Well, now, that's where you make your mistake. You should stick to scotch and soda.
Why?
Well, did you ever hear of an alcoholic who drank scotch and soda? Civilized drink. See somebody guzzling straight whiskey, and right away you figure they're bucking for AA. It doesn't matter how much scotch and soda you drink. Nobody thinks you're an alcoholic. If you were, you'd be drinking it straight. You want a big one or a little one?
Medium.
I see you brought along your little tape recorder. I suppose you want me to say something appropriate about how lost I am without the great man, right?
Right.
Is it true that you're going to inherit a show?
That's a possibility.
Oh, it's a good deal for you. How does it feel to fall into $1 million? Hey, are you sure you didn't jimmy the differential or gum up the carburetor, whatever you do to make a car go on the side of a railroad embankment?
Quite sure.
Cigarette?
No, thanks. I'm fine.
Oh, yes, you are. Fine. How's your drink?
Fine.
Laconic, aren't you? Laconic, laconic. Does that mean, laconic, that you're taking over everything that used to belong to Fuller?
Not quite everything.
Oh, not quite everything. Laconic. I used to belong to Fuller. Once in a while, that is. When it was in the neighborhood and it was raining. He came up here one night, 5:30 in the morning, loaded. You know what he said?
No.
He said, I was riding in a cab, and I looked at the signpost, and it said 54th Street and 2nd Avenue. And you were the closest, so here I am. Oh, he was full of compliments like that. You ever hear me sing?
Sure, I heard you sing.
Oh, I sing like 10,000 other girls. I sing good, but not great. Good, but not great. My last paycheck was $1,100. $1,100 is a lot of singing. $1,100 a week. Because Herb Fuller liked to drop in on me sometimes. When he was in the neighborhood.
Is that the way you look at it?
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. Make me another drink. No soda, just ice. You don't have to worry about my passing out on you. I don't do that. I don't get sick either, or loud. People that know me say I'm a very quiet, shy, reserved girl when I'm sober. Or don't you like quiet, shy, reserved girls, Mr. Harris?
You think of yourself as a pretty tough little broad, don't you?
Oh, I am a pretty tough little broad. You can kiss me now if you want to.
Thank you.
Okay?
Okay.
Just window shopping?
Just window shopping.
Take a good look at me. Nice hair, regular features, good teeth, good body. Right now, you wouldn't exactly find it a chore to make love to me, would you?
I wouldn't find it a chore at all.
Well, we're not going to. You know why?
You tell me.
Because I never know whether I was doing it because I wanted to or because I was buying a premium on my job insurance. And neither would you.
Was it job insurance with him?
No, not at first it wasn't.
What was it? Love?
Oh, laconic Joe Harris. Love, he asked. Like I could give him a one-word answer. What was it? Love? You didn't really know him, did you?
I didn't really know.
I was 18 when I sent him that recording of my voice.
You sent him a recording?
I made a record in one of those penny arcade places. I sang Tea for Two and sent it to Fuller. I wrote a letter saying I was deaf and blind, and I sent a picture in the record. I figured they'd find out right away I was a phony. But maybe I could get to New York before they did. I had to get away from home. Anyway, they fell for the letter. Then, of course, they found out at the first audition I was a phony. But Fuller was there. And he followed me out to the elevator when I left. Dated me up for dinner. Then we went to his place after. Oh, I figured I could handle him. After all, I was a veteran with the high school football team. I could handle them. I could handle him.
And?
I couldn't. Ever. Not then. Never. Oh, he was crazy about me for a couple of weeks. He gave me singing lessons and he put me on a show. And then he stopped coming around regularly. But the thing was, I better be here when he arrived. One night I went to the music hall for the 9 o'clock show. When I got back, around midnight, he was waiting for me, sore as a boil. Don't forget, he said, you belong to me anytime I want you. And when I want you here, waiting for me. Don't forget. And then he socked me. Split my lip.
And now here's the voice of Carol Larson singing The Meaning of the Blues.
Listen.
Of the sea till my lover left me.
I don't have a bad voice.
Blue was just a bluebird in a tree.
Will you spice up my drink a little bit?
He said, forget me. Blue always made me think.
How drunk am I?
Fair to middling.
Cloudless summer skies, so fresh and warm.
But now the blue I see is just like winter. Winter skies with clouds about to storm. Do you find me attractive?
I find you very attractive.
You know, people know me. I get lots of fan mail. Given half a chance, I could really straighten up and fly right.
I'm sure you could.
And blues were only torch songs, fashion for impulsive ingenues. But now I know, too well I know,
too well I know the meaning of the blues.
You know, the one thing I could never figure out about Fuller was this. He liked him young and fresh and unspoiled. And then when he made him different, he didn't want him anymore. He had to go out and find some new, fresh ones. And he couldn't let the old ones go. Do you know Harry Carnes?
Harry Carnes, the announcer? Yeah, I know.
You know something? I think somebody fixed that car so it would crash.
What about Harry Carnes?
Oh, you got a one-track mind, lover. Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Harry Carnes. Except for Fuller, he was the only permanent man I ever had. We even thought of getting married.
What happened?
Oh, the great man happened.
I'm sorry, Carol. I'm very sorry. Hi, sexy.
Thank you.
You're late.
All of a sudden, you're a time clock.
I'm Eddie Brand. Hi.
Hi, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I overslept.
That'll happen. Take your time. No rush. I got an hour and a half before my recording date.
Your coffee got cold. I'll have to get you some more.
Never mind. Just get the mini-tape set up.
What do you want to know about the great man? I know better than most of the slobs around town that are taking it big. Me and him been buddies for a long time. Be my guest.
Herb's Brand, huh?
You know it. Well, what's the bit? Anything you want, tell me how long you want it, and I'll hit it within 2 seconds. Herb used to say I was like a walking stopwatch. Great time sense I got. I guess it's got something to do with rhythm.
Did you like him?
Did I like him? You out of your mind? I adored him. Let me set you straight on one thing right from the beginning. Herb Fuller was the sweetest, straightest, greatest guy ever lived.
Oh?
Look, it's none of my business. Just what are you figuring on for this memorial show you're doing?
Well, I've been talking to people that knew him.
You been digging around Fuller's life?
Yep.
And?
And what?
And what have you been digging?
A lot of things.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Like what?
Like a lot of things.
You never knew Herb Fuller, did you?
No, I never knew him at all.
And you're trying to find out what kind of a man he was in 4 days.
Look, Eddie, that's the way it has to be. I didn't ask for this job. I'm doing it the only way I know how. I read the clippings, I talk to the people that knew him.
Yeah? Who'd you talk to?
Sid Moore, for one.
That's great. Trying to get a line on Fuller by talking to him is like asking a cat about a dog. Who else?
I talked to Nick Celentano.
Well, that's just fine. I bet Nick's been real nice to you, hasn't he? Helpful. What do you say about Herb?
Well, I gather he didn't like him much.
You gathered right.
Neither did Carol.
Oh, sure. You talked to Carol. I suppose she told you how Herb messed up her life when she was just a sweet young kid from home. I suppose she told you that.
She told me that.
Listen, I was around when that kid turned up. She was an innocent kid. Oh, sure. Did she happen to tell you why she left home? I'll bet she did not. Sure, he put her on the show. He felt sorry for her. He was strictly good to her, but she didn't see it that way. Right off the bat, she started drinking. She'd show up with half a bag on. Then she started knocking around. I don't think there's anybody in the band that hasn't been involved with her.
You included, Eddie?
Sure, me included. Look, you saw her. How long was it before she had you hanging from the chandelier? Herb took a lot from that broad. Why he didn't haul off and paste her one now and then, I'll never know.
Why did Carol hate him?
Hate him? Are you out of your mind? She was crazy about him. But Fuller's not around anymore. You are. Get the picture?
Let me ask you something, Eddie.
Sure, anything, kid.
How much do you make a week?
Now?
Yeah, now.
Oh, 1,600, 1,650. Maybe more if I got a hot record going for me. Why, what's the bid?
How much were you making when you had that pickup band at the Roadhouse?
125. Oh, I get it. You figure I think Fuller's a great guy because he added $1,500 a week to my salary check. Is that it?
It's a possibility.
Look, kid, what are you trying to do? Write an expose? Stop trying to play Mr. District Attorney. Just tell the people what they want to hear about him. That he was a great guy. It happens to be the truth. My truth. Maybe not Nick's or Carl's or Sid Moore's, but mine. And it better be yours, too.
Yeah, Eddie, I guess you're right.
Look, I got an orchestra waiting for me in a recording studio. You want to do a tape with me? Let's do it.
All right, Eddie, let's get with it.
Now, what exactly do you want? You want smalls? Something simple? Kind of word impression?
Anything at all. About a minute.
I'm set. Roll it anytime you're ready.
Okay.
What was Herb Fuller like? Well, that's kind of a hard question to answer. Or maybe it's the simplest question in the world. You see, my father died when I was a kid. In a way, Herb was like that father I never had. He was warm and big. You felt kind of safe just because he was there. You knew you could go to him with anything that was on your mind. Anything that was worrying you, no matter what it was, he wouldn't get mad. He'd just look at you with that look he had and then do something about fixing everything up. He was also like the brother I never had. Like everybody else who knew him, I'm gonna miss him. Okay?
Fine. On the nose.
Right. Anything else, don't hesitate. I hope we're gonna work together. I think we'll get along fine.
Thanks, Eddie. Thanks.
Deontay, nothing. Call on me anytime, kid.
How was it?
Phony but sincere. He liked Fuller. I think I'll drop in on Mike Jackson and see how he's making out with the tapes. Hey, Mike.
Oh, hi.
Here's another one for your collection. Eddie Brand.
Oh?
How are you making out?
Well, I'm working on the stuff you got up at the funeral. It's good stuff.
Good.
Some of the levels are pretty bad, so I dubbed it, stuck a filler on it, cleaned it up for you.
Okay, let's see what you got.
Oh, okay. Now, I figure you can run this under narration. You know, setting the scene, shuffling the feet, devoted fans paying their last respect to their beloved radio and TV friend, that bit. I can make a loop for you and run it as long as you need.
Okay.
Now, after you set the scene with the organ, you go into the bit about talking to people, and you lead us right into this.
May I ask why you came here today?
I came to see him, rest his soul. He was always there with something cheery to say when you needed him. He'll be missed, believe me, by a good many.
Good.
That was an easy one. But that high school kid was a toughie.
I'll bet.
I had to build her piece bit by bit. Here, listen to this.
And why are you here today?
My sister wanted to. It was nice. All those flowers and the music and the man up there talking. It gave me a kind of feeling. We used to see him on television. He was like he was your father.
That's great.
Sounded all right, huh?
Like it happened that way, Mike.
I was working on that slob with the club members when you came in. I don't think you can save much of that. It's too choppy, you know?
Well, maybe the first two pieces will be enough.
Oh, you want to hear the piece from Fuller's wife?
Fine. Good.
Here's your coffee, Mr. Jackson.
You take it. You got an expense account.
Here you are, Bobby.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Oh, here it is.
The one thing that makes it easier for the boys and myself is the knowledge that all of you share some of our grief. As long as there are friends and listeners who remember the happiness and joy he brought into their lives, he isn't really dead. That's a wonderful kind of immortality for him.
It'll play.
Like the 7th game of the World Series. Say, did you know I used to be Fuller's engineer?
No.
2 years. What a liberal education that was. How was Eddie Brand?
Heart-rending.
Eddie was robbing him deaf, dumb, and blind. He was on the payroll of every song plugger in town. Every time you heard a tune on Fuller's program, you could chalk up another 25 bucks in Eddie's pocket. Of course, everybody in the show was doing that job. It works like this. It's a hot day, so it's natural to say that you've stuck your head in the refrigerator. But if you say refrigerator or icebox, it's just a piece of copy. But if you mention the brand name, it's a case of scotch. Fuller was on the grab, too. The difference was he stole big. I see you got to know our Carol.
You heard the tapes, huh?
I heard it. It was in a box without a label on it. I don't think there's anything in it you can use on the air.
Hi. Blood plasma stories, Mike. The others just miscellaneous stuff, dogs, home life, and so on.
Anything happened while I was out?
Carleton's
Hello.
secretary called.
Just a minute.
He wants to see you at 9 o'clock in his office tomorrow morning.
It's for you, Joe.
I had your calls transferred.
Hello?
Mr. Harris, please.
Speaking.
This is Paul Beasley of Worcester.
Yes, Mr. Beasley.
I'm in the building up here on the 10th floor visiting Mr. Cutler. I can be down in your office in a couple of minutes.
Well, that's fine, Mr. Beasley. Just why would you want to do that?
This is Joe Harris, isn't it?
Yes, and this is Paul Beasley, isn't it?
That's correct.
Of Worcester?
Correct.
Just a minute. Ginny, do I know a Paul Beasley?
Beasley?
Mr. Beasley, would you mind telling me just what it is you want to talk to me about?
I own station WGHP in Worcester.
I don't want to sound rude, Mr. Beasley, but so what?
You are Joe Harris, aren't you?
Jenny, will you please tell this man that I'm Joe Harris?
He is Joe Harris.
Convinced?
Completely.
Good.
I didn't
Now, will you please have someone at your end vouch for the fact that you're Paul Beasley?
Oh, that's perfectly ridiculous.
Right.
Mr. Harris, I didn't doubt you.
That was Paul Beasley.
Of Worcester.
Mike, why don't you start isolating the blood bank tapes? I'll run in on you later. I think I'll go down to the restaurant and get something to eat. I'm starving to death.
I'm dead tired.
You're tired. You haven't spent 15 hours a day listening to what a heel the guy you've got to glorify really was.
The feet of clay, huh?
Right up to the knees, at least.
You mind if I conk off for a while?
Conk. Yes?
Mr. Harris?
Yes?
Mr. Joe Harris?
That's right.
I just spoke to you on the phone from Mr. Cutler's office, the regional representative for the New England area.
Paul Beasley, what a surprise after all these years.
Oh, I'm afraid you're making some sort of a mistake there.
You're not Paul Beasley? You mean I've mistaken you for my good friend Paul Beasley? Impossible. You're not Paul Beasley?
Oh, yes, I am Paul Beasley.
That's what I said, Paul Beasley of Worcester, Mass.
We never met, you know, Mr. Harris. You are Mr. Harris, aren't you?
Jenny?
He is Joe Harris.
And my secretary.
Oh. How do you do?
How do you do? Excuse me.
Well, Mr. Beasley?
You're probably wondering what I'm doing here.
As a matter of fact, what are you doing here, Paul? Didn't you get the 10 grand I left in the hollow tree?
Oh, you're joking, Mr. Harris.
I'm joking, Mr. Beasley.
I thought so. It is true that you're doing the Herb Fuller Memorial Show on Friday night.
Right.
I gave Herbert his first job in radio.
You gave Herb Fuller his first radio job?
That's right.
Well, you know, Mr. Beasley, I've been talking to a lot of people that knew Herb Fuller very well. Sit down. You might help fill in some of the gaps.
Oh, not so fast, Mr. Harris. I'm a businessman. You know, I might have something that you want. I don't expect to make you a present of it.
You want a little dough, is that it?
Of course I don't want any money. I'm afraid you misunderstand me.
I'm trying not to. Now, just what do you want?
Our call letters, WGHP, stand for something. Stand for something very close to our hearts. Mrs. Beasley's and mine, I mean. They stand for, with God's help, peace. WGHP. And I just wondered if you'd try to get those call letters into your broadcast and explain them. It might do a lot of good.
I'll try. Now, when did you first meet Herb Fuller?
Oh, in 1933. He came in to audition for one of our programs. It was a sort of an amateur hour, but it had an extra added ingredient. The contestant not only had to perform, but he had to deliver a 2-minute sermon. Now, our listeners phoned in their votes, and the content of the sermon counted as much as the talent of the performer. Herbert was in the Navy then, and he came down from Boston one night to audition for the program.
What did he do?
He sang.
And how did he make out?
He won first prize. But it was the sermon that won the contest for him.
It was good?
We got over 500 requests for it.
Do you remember what it was like?
That's what decided me about this trip. When I read of Herbert's death, I remembered that sermon of his, and I thought it might be of some use to you.
It might indeed. The best sermon I know has no words. None at all. I hear it at night when my ship is out at sea, out under the lonely stars, separated from the world by a limitless void of water. And one night I got to wondering out under those stars what God was really like, what he looked like, how I'd know him if I ever saw him. And the answer was so simple, my friends, so simple. The answer was that they were all God, the stars and the night, the silence and the lapping of the water. And I wouldn't have any trouble recognizing him when I saw him, because he was everywhere around me, in everything I heard, everything I said, everything I saw. God was the sum total of all of us. And it makes you wonder, it really does, how can man be so small and so insignificant, and at the same time be so great and so wonderful? By the way, Mr. Beasley, you don't still happen to have a recording of that show, do you?
The same thought occurred to me. I didn't have the time to look through the storeroom, but I'm sure it's there somewhere. Mrs. Beasley's funny about things like that. She just can't throw anything away. You know, Mr. Harris, in a great many ways, Herbert was not a very nice man. In a great many ways, he was a very bad man.
How do you mean?
Mr. Harris, I realize in the eyes of a lot of people I'm faintly ridiculous. I can't help that. I don't think I'm ridiculous. My friends don't think so. Mrs. Beasley doesn't think so. I don't mind that slight smile that always round people's mouths when they talk to me. Truly, I don't. I noticed it on you, Mr. Harris. I don't mind. But there is one thing I do mind, Mr. Harris. I mind very much. I don't like to be taken advantage of. Herbert took advantage of me.
How?
After he won that amateur contest, he was the talk of Worcester. It sounds silly, doesn't it? The talk of Worcester. Anyway, I hired him. 6 months later, when he got out of the Navy, I gave him a program of 2 hours length in the morning of his own. And right from the start, he began including a little sermon in his broadcast every day. Of course, it's simple to use hindsight now and realize that he figured if that's what they wanted, he could certainly give it to them. He had found a good thing, and he was auditioning it in Worcester.
An out-of-town tryout, huh?
Trying it on the dog, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Beasley, I don't find you the least bit ridiculous.
People don't after a while. Anyway, Herbert was very successful. Oh, we had more sponsors on his program than all the other programs on the station. He lived with us in those days. We sort of adopted him. Mrs. Beasley treated him as if he were our own son. I suppose his basic appeal was that he reminded everybody of their kid brother, whether they ever had one or not. After about a year, he started to change. Not all at once, not overnight, but he started, well, he bought a lot of fancy clothes and a flashy convertible. He started hanging around with a lot of shady people in a lot of shady bars. He even began to talk smutty on the air. And strangely enough, the same people who loved him for the hymns and the sermons loved him for this, too. At first, I thought of sitting down with him and having a serious talk. Then I thought I'd let it pass and let him work it out. I thought he was a decent boy underneath it all. But he was sowing his wild oats. It was something he had to get out of his system. But he didn't. Not then, not later. He never got it out of his system. You know, one morning I walked opened the station. I walked through the vestibule. I opened the inner door. The waiting room was in a terrible condition. Disgraceful. The water cooler was tipped over, a bottle was smashed in the opposite corners. If someone had thrown it across the room, cigarette ends were overturned, and the sand was spilled on the rug. A large section of the stair carpeting leading to the offices upstairs was burned. I was appalled. I thought someone had broken in. When I started climbing the stairs, halfway up, I found upstairs was in a worse condition. Chairs were smashed. The file cabinet was overturned, the contents all over the floor. I was sick to my stomach at the senseless destruction. Then I opened the door to my office, and he was on the sofa, dead drunk. There was a half-empty bottle of liquor on the floor. My first impulse was to hit him with anything I could lay my hands on. My first impulse was to destroy him, to tear him apart with my bare hands. But I didn't. I just cleaned the place up. I got rid of the woman. I sobered him up. And I kept Mrs. Beasley away from the station until the damage was repaired. I took $50 a week out of his salary till it was all paid for, but I couldn't fire him. Not without telling Mrs. Beasley why, and I couldn't tell her that. Then a colleague of yours happened to be in Worcester one day and heard him and offered him a contract.
Sid Moore?
Yes, I think that's the name. I never saw Herbert again. Oh, I've heard him many times. I don't suppose all of this is of much use to you.
The original sermon would be if you could find that record.
Oh, I'll find the record, Mr. Harris. Why do you suppose we do it, you and I?
Do what?
Well, why do you suppose that I'm going back to Worcester to look for the record? Why do you suppose that you're going on the air Friday night to tell the whole world what a great man he was? Why don't we just stand in front of a microphone and tell the truth about him?
I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Beasley. Why did you come to see me in the first place?
Because, quite frankly, Mrs. Beasley wanted me to. What's your excuse?
It's a job. The most important job I've ever had.
Your excuse is no better than mine. Well,
Mr. Beasley, I'm sorry.
About what?
Well, when you came in, that silly business on the couch with my secretary, we clown around a lot, and some of it isn't in very good taste, but we don't mean anything by it.
Oh, that's all right.
Jenny, Mr. Beasley's going back to Worcester to try and find a transcription. When he finds it, he'll call you up. You make arrangements to have it piped down, out of Boston if necessary. Well, goodbye, Mr. Beasley.
Goodbye, Mr. Harris. If you ever get up to Worcester, I wish you'd drop in on us. I'd like you to meet Mrs. Beasley.
I'd love to.
Goodbye, miss.
Goodbye. Anything?
Another roll of tape I can't use on anybody's airwaves. Take it off the machine and put it in my top drawer, will you? I want it from my memory book to remind me of what a louse is really like.
Beasley?
No, not Beasley.
Oh, I put the coffee on your tab.
In the immortal words of Eddie Brand, be my guest.
I finished the blood bank tapes. Do you want to hear them?
All right. Let's hear the great man.
I'm speaking to you now from a small town in Germany. The name of it isn't important, even if the Army would let me tell it to you. A few hours ago, this town was held by the Germans. Your sons and brothers and your nephews stormed it with their M1 rifles, and that peculiar heroism that distinguishes the American GI in combat. They advanced from gate post to gate post, from ditch to ditch, and wrenched it bodily from the trained killers of Adolf Hitler. It's a pretty beat-up town. Pretty beat up. As I stand here on the main street and look at the rubble on either side, it's any town, in any war. You won't find this one mentioned in the communiques or in any of your history books. But some of you will remember the name of this town forever. Remember it because this is where your boy, your husband, your father was killed. There's nothing left in this small town now except the living and the wounded. The dead have been carried away. And I'm standing at a battalion aid station where those wounded are being cared for. Some of the boys I can see from where I'm standing will live through the night. But some of them will, because of something I'm holding in my hand. It isn't much to look at, my friends. Nothing much at all. Just a bottle with some tubing attached to it. But it's one of the great links between you and your loved ones. A bloodline. Because what I'm holding is a bottle of plasma. I've carried it halfway across the world. From the blood bank in New York, where the blood was taken from the arm of someone who's listening to my voice right now. It's come to the end of its journey. Here on this dusty main street. In this battered German town. And because it has, one of the boys lying here will live through the night. And his family will never have to remember the name of a battered German town forever. Hold that light a little higher. That's all right, son. Hold on. Just hang on, son. Hurry up with the plasma. Let her go. It's going to be all right, son. hope you were listening carefully. I was watching. You couldn't see the sweat standing out on the face of the medic's captain. You couldn't see that blood flowing quietly into the kid's veins, giving him a fighting chance to stay alive. I could see all that, and more. I could see 100 million of us, an ocean away from this battered German town, not being shot at, not lying on our backs on a canvas stretcher suspended between life and death. We all have a lot of extra blood flowing through our veins. Ask your doctor, he'll tell you. We can spare some of it. Just a pint is enough. Enough to keep some other young American boy in some other battered German town alive. For God's sake, think of that tonight.
Wow. Did it work? Did it get blood?
A couple of warehouses full of it. He got a pot full of awards for it, too.
I can see why. Well, it really got him, didn't it?
Oh, hooray for him. Guys are dying right in front of him, and you're impressed because he felt something. 3 cheers for Herb Fuller.
Now, wait a minute, Mike. Stop being a wise guy for a minute. I've been poking around this guy's life for 3 days. For 3 days, I've had the feeling he wasn't a man at all. That he hated people, used them, lied, and cheated. Sort of a glorified con man with his voice amplified. I couldn't find one single normal human emotion of love, decency, or gratitude. Now I've found it, and don't you slough it off on me.
Okay, so it's a good piece.
Were you around when this originally went on the air?
No. I was lying in some battalion aid station myself.
Okay, Mike. Put it on the show reel.
You need me anymore, Joe?
No, honey, you run alone.
Don't forget. Sidmore's place tonight.
Right.
And Carleton's office at 9 tomorrow.
Okay.
What's eating you?
Herb Fuller. You're a nice girl, Jenny.
Good night, Mike.
Night. Is Fuller getting to you?
You knew what he was like. I didn't. Wouldn't he get to you?
Have you figured out what you're going to do after Friday? After you step into the shoes?
I don't know, Mike. I honestly don't know.
Well, just thought I'd ask. I got a couple of package ideas I'd like to show you. You know, maybe you can use one of them.
Sure, I'd like to see him, Mike. You all finished?
All wrapped up on the tape end. How's the script?
All done but for this. Just how about those blood tapes?
I told you I think they're great. Phony is a $9 bill, but great.
You mean to say you honestly don't think he was moved while he was doing those tapes?
Well, what difference does it make? Look, Thomas Edison is fooling around in his laboratory, and all of a sudden a hunk of glass lights up. Who cares whether he's thinking, now I'll invent the electric light bulb?
I care.
Relax. In a couple of weeks, you'll discover it's your name on the salary check, not his.
Yeah, Mike. I guess you're right. Thanks.
Hiya, Coach. Welcome to Chez Moi.
Wow.
What do you think of the place?
Interesting.
I think it stinks. That decorator threw me a curve. You bring the script with you?
Most of it.
I thought we ought to throw it on the floor and walk around it a couple of times.
Gee, I wish I'd said that.
I think we're too close to the green to use a 5-iron.
Hey.
Hello, Mr. Harris.
One drinking out, honey. Mr. Harris and I have to talk business.
I'll leave in a minute, Mr. Moore. I would like one drink, if I may.
Right.
Well, Miss Receptionist, how do you like your job?
My name's Marcia Miller.
Well, Marcia Miller, how do you like your work?
Very much.
The hours are a little long, aren't they?
Was that a crack?
Oh. You and Marcia getting acquainted?
Yeah, we just found out we both smoke the same brand of cigarettes.
Marcia used to be on the radio.
No.
Where was that, honey?
Bennington.
Bennington. How about that? Look, honey, you know, I'd take you home myself, but Joe and I have got a little skull session here. We've got to work out the signals. I tell you what you do. You put that cab fare on the petty cash slip in the office tomorrow morning, okay? Bye, honey.
I'm beginning to understand the fast turnover in receptionists.
Yeah, good kid. I'm just going to look over your script. When are you going to get that recording from that guy in Worcester?
I'm having it piped down first thing in the morning. What do you think?
It's the greatest. There won't be a dry eye in the house. Old Sid's still got that scout's eye. He picked a Butte and you. We really got him this time. Us, you, me. We've really got him with this. From Carleton on down, they're going to have to fight my fight this time. They know I could blow Herb Fuller sky high. If I ever start talking, he's really dead.
Yeah, what can you tell him?
Hmm? I can tell him, and don't you forget it. I can tell him.
Like what?
None of your business. Get me a refill.
Why don't you sit this one out for a while, Skipper?
Who's driving? I'm home. Come on. Yeah, then come on back and take your shoes off and sit down and get good and loaded with old Sid. We both got it coming to us. Say, how'd you like those blood tapes of hers?
Oh, brother, they just tore me apart.
He really touched all the bases on those, didn't he?
Did he ever? I haven't gotten over it yet.
You didn't know I made that trip with him, did you?
What trip?
Well, you didn't know that I went up to the front with him, did you?
You went to the front with Herb Fuller?
Quite an experience. Well, first we went to that, you know, that fancy uniform place. Sid Moore and Herb Fuller got fitted out in the classiest uniforms you ever saw. Great big shoulder patch. Official war correspondent. And then we went to Paris.
How did Fuller like Paris?
Fuller? Paris? How did Jimmy Walker like New York? How did John McGraw like the Polo Grounds? I hear you went to see Carol.
Who told you?
Well, that's the difference. Who told me? Too bad you're going to have to dump her.
You must have dump on the brain. Who said anything about dumping her?
I did just now. She's out. Let somebody else buy her booze. Oh, if you want to help her out in the rent for her apartment for a while, that's between the two of you. She has sung her last drunken note on the air.
You want to know something? I'm just about up to my ears in people who want to play God.
Like I said, Carol is finie, kaput, just because I said it.
All right, fine. Here, I make you a present of a nice rough draft script. You read it into an open mic tomorrow night.
You finished? You finished showboating? You're gonna make me a nice present of an unfinished script. Ah, you clown. You dime-a-dozen clown. You think the Amalgamated Network is hanging on what you do or do not do tomorrow night? Ask Mike Jackson what he's been doing in between recording sessions with you. He's been building a standby show. I went and got a bunch of old Herb Fuller tapes, and I'm going to have a standby announcer fill in the gaps. It's in the can, and it's going to be standing by tomorrow night just in case you get too big for your britches. What are you trying to do, threaten me? Come off it, kid.
You're all a bunch of pros, aren't you?
Hey, you know what we'll do? As soon as this show is over, and as soon as we get Operation Harris on the rails, you and I are going to take a little trip to Europe. And we'll take along a tape recorder and make some remotes. And this time, I won't have to leave Paris by myself.
What do you mean by that?
You liked those blood tapes of Fuller's, didn't you? They were heartbreaking, weren't they? You could just smell the blood and sweat, couldn't you? They were phony. Fuller never left Paris. He was loaded and on the prowl the minute we got off that airplane. When it came time to take the blood up to the front, He said I could take a flying fling for myself. He wasn't going, and he disappeared. Couldn't find him for 2 days. So I took the blood and the recorder and went up to the Siegfried line myself. He never showed.
So you recorded those tapes at the battalion aid station?
The operating table was a stretcher on a kitchen table with an army blanket thrown over it. The overhead light was a Jeep headlight. They had it hooked up to a battery of the Jeep standing outside the barn. They were amputating a kid's leg.
Did they actually use the blood you brought with you?
The doctor said it saved the kid's life.
What happened to Fuller?
What happened to Fuller? I located him in a hoosegow. I got figured he got mixed up with some dame, and this kid was in the black market up to her second teeth. And when they raided her joint, Fuller was in a jam. But old fireman Sid Moore got him out of it. With a checkbook. My checkbook. And every cent I had. And when I got him out, he did everything but lick my hand. He was my buddy bud, and he was never gonna forget it. Well, when we got back to New York, I had him do his end of the tapes, and then I went to see Carleton. Mr. Carleton gave me back every cent I spent on Herb. Period. That's all, brother. Bye-bye, baby. Wave bye-bye, Sid.
And you took it?
I took it. I was running scared. I chickened. I didn't have enough guts or enough money to take on a network or sweat out a blacklist. But Herb Fuller's news again. Big news. And I can blast the Herb Fuller legend and probably put Amalgamated out of business. They're not gonna dump old Sid Moore this time. And I got enough dough stashed away to ride out any blacklist. What's with you?
You shouldn't have told me about that trip, Sid. You don't know what those tapes meant to me. For once, I thought I heard this guy being a human being. But he wasn't. He was just another phony, just another con game. He was still being Herb Fuller.
Oh, come off it. It got blood, didn't it? Who are you to judge motives? It worked. It got blood. It saved lives. Hey, you kill me. Mr. Honest Dan, the reporter man. Just another con game. Just another phony. Where are you going?
Outside for some fresh air.
Oh, now, come on. Aren't you taking this kind of big?
Thanks, Sid. Thanks for a wonderful and very instructive evening.
Been here all night?
Uh-huh.
You look great.
I feel great.
Seen the morning papers?
Nope.
Philip Carleton, president of Amalgamated Broadcasting System, denied that any decision has been made on Herb Fuller's replacement. Joe Harris, he said, has only been hired to do the radio memorial show. Nothing else. Does it mean anything?
Is what it says, I guess.
You being dumped?
Who knows? Maybe that's what the meeting's about this morning.
And you have 10 minutes to get there.
Well, I better shove off. Brush my hair, shave my face, put on a clean shirt, go to the principal's office. Like a good boy.
Joe, I suppose you saw that piece in the paper this morning.
I saw it.
I suppose you wondered about it.
I wondered about it.
Yes, of course you did. You thought that we'd decided on you as the Fuller replacement at the last meeting. You thought you had the job. Isn't that what you thought?
That's what I thought.
You were right, Joe. You do have the job. See, that piece in the paper this morning was the opening gun in a campaign, which I'll try to make plain to you in the next few minutes. See, right now, the rumors are circulating around the agencies that you are on your way out. A couple of days, you'll read other stories. One columnist will even have a big scoop to the effect that Amalgamated has decided to dump Joe Harris. Now, we will neither confirm nor deny these stories, but you can take my word for it, Joe. By this time next week, you won't be able to buy a newspaper on credit.
Thanks, Mr. Carleton. You certainly made my day.
There'll be only two people in the world who will know that these rumors and column items are phony. You and I.
Stay healthy, Mr. Carleton. I wouldn't want to be the only one that knows it.
Perhaps you're asking yourself why.
No, I'm asking you. Why?
Well, I think I can tell you in 2 words. Sid Moore. You signed a contract with him, didn't you?
Yes.
All right. Now, Sid Moore owns a piece of you. Becomes something like a manager to you, and thereby earns himself a certain percentage of your earnings, which, incidentally, will be huge. We have no objection to that, but now Sid Moore has a certain claim on us, so he can force us to include him in any deal we make with you. We're not sure we want to include him. See, in the past, we've been able to convince Mr. Moore that it was to his advantage to tear up any contracts that conflicted with what we regard as the general good. But this time he has a strong case. He realizes that all our publicity has stretched the personal relationship between you and Herb Fuller. Now, we know these relationships didn't exist, but the public doesn't. So if Sid Moore succeeds in destroying the Fuller legend, he destroys you in the process. And he's willing to play that way, all or nothing. You follow me this far?
This far, yes.
Fine. Now, we turn the screw a little. We decide that you are not network caliber. You're a fine young fellow and capable of being a big success on a local level, but you do not have the network potential we need. So we decide to dispense with your services. How does this sit with Mr. Moore?
It sits on his Adam's apple and presses.
Presses hard, Joe. He has a contract, but the contract isn't worth anything if we dump you. What can Sid do? Shoot his mouth off? Well, not now. He has nothing to gain by doing that now. He can't threaten to destroy you. We've already destroyed you with a complete disinterest in your future. Now, this is where you come into the picture.
It's about time.
You are hopping mad, Joe. Sid told you that you'd be sitting pretty, and you've been double-crossed. You've been left waiting at the church.
Caught off base like a bush leaguer by the hidden ball trick.
I see that you picked up some of Mr. Moore's colorful patterns of speech. But you're mad, Joe, very mad. You demand your contract back. You tell him he couldn't manage
a girls' softball team.
Yes, a girls' softball team. You tell him that you still have faith in yourself. Then you offer to buy your contract back.
He knows I haven't got a dime in the bank.
We'll pay you $5,000 for tonight's memorial show. You offer that to him for your contract. See, Sid Moore has a native shrewdness. As far as he's concerned, you're a washed-up nobody, and $5,000 is $5,000. Now, the day you buy that contract back, you walk into this office and you sign another one. A contract to take over the Fuller radio and TV shows. Everything is simple if you approach it with a proper orientation. Once you take the loaded gun out of his pocket, he isn't such a tough hombre after all.
Suppose I can't buy the contract back.
In that case, Joe, I'm afraid only you will know that the stories in the paper aren't true.
If I may borrow your figure of speech, Mr. Carleton, you are the one with the loaded gun, and it's pointed straight at my head.
I suppose it does seem that way to you.
You're not going to reject me so much that it's impossible to salvage me, are you?
Joe, when we get around to making you the white-haired boy again, we do it with the biggest exploitation budget in Amalgamated history. We plaster you on every billboard and car card in the country. We slap your voice on every station break all day and all night. We put your mug on the front of every fan magazine on the stands. We throw cocktail parties for you every hour, on the hour. We guest star you on every radio and TV show in the Amalgamated stable. We sell you the way we sell soap.
It's as cold-blooded as that, huh?
What's so cold-blooded about it? I'm sick of people talking about this industry as an art form. It isn't. It's a business. It's no less ethical, and it's just as hard-boiled as any other business. We're selling time to sell personalities that in turn sell products. Simple as that. Joe, I would like to take a look at your script for tonight.
I'll send it up by messenger.
I don't get that look on your face. I'm not going to butcher it. I just want to look it over. Now, Joe, you can pick up an envelope from Miss Stoughton on your way out. It's your $5,000. She has it in cash. Now, just prepare yourself for the discouraging things you'll be reading about yourself next week. Don't let a sudden case of leprosy bother you too much.
I'll try not to.
Good boy. I'll be listening with interest tonight. Good luck, Joe.
Good evening. My name is Joe Harris. I'm here tonight to tell you about a man. A great man. 4 days ago, he died. You read about his death over your morning coffee. Read about it, and wherever you were, whatever you were doing, somehow the day became a little grayer, the world became a little emptier. And tonight, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I want you to spend an hour with me on this Friday evening, remembering. Remembering a man most of you never met. A man who, despite that, was an important part of your life. A man named Herb Fuller. In the next hour, you'll meet the people who shared his life and his career. And from them will emerge a portrait in sound. A portrait of a great man. To begin the story of Herb Fuller, you have to go back. Ladies and gentlemen, what you just heard was the start of a broadcast that I spent 4 days preparing. It was the broadcast that you expected to hear, and that until just now, I expected to do. It was a good job, guaranteed to break your heart, guaranteed to prove that the death of Herb Fuller was one of the minor tragedies of our time. Well, you're not going to hear it. I'm a reporter. And because I am a reporter, I'm going to bring you a different story. The real, true Herb Fuller story. Step by step, as I discovered it in those 4 days. Even though it's going to cost me my job.
What do you think you're doing?
I'm calling Master Control. I'm going to have him roll that standby show. I'm cutting that double-crossing louse off the air.
Put down that phone, Sid.
Mad and angry and maybe even sick.
Put it down.
Our story will take us to a side street in Worcester, Massachusetts, where you'll meet Mr. and Mrs. Beasley, and you'll hear about their little radio station with the unusual call letters. They play an important part in the Herb Fuller story. You see...
Sid, let me tell you some of the facts of life. Whether you cut him off the air or not, Joe Harris tomorrow morning is on the front page of every paper in America.
Left behind him.
Tomorrow morning, he's Mr. Integrity, a national celebrity.
You'll meet Carol Larson.
You see, Sid, in a short minute and a half, he's already accomplished quite a lot. Number one, he's got you hooked. Your little expose on Herb Fuller isn't worth a plug nickel now. And number two, he's taking care of his own build-up, dramatically and effectively. If we want him on Amalgamated, we take him on his own terms, which, incidentally, takes care of your contract with him. So that if, number three, he wants us to dump you, we dump you.
I'm going to play you some of those unforgettable tapes recorded at a battalion aid station, the Siegfried line. Maybe you remember them. Well, you're going to hear them again tonight, and now you'll also hear how they were made and by whom.
There is, however, Sid, one small gleam of light. Integrity and crusading and self-products, too. That, after all, is our primary business. Well, been a slight change of direction and plan, that's all, but we're still in business.
Tonight.
Hey, Sid.
Why must I tell you? Why am I doing
Light up one of these good cigars that you like so much. Sit back and enjoy the broadcast. Should be very entertaining.
But as you listen, remember that Herb Fuller did succeed in sending a lot of blood to the battlefields of Europe. Did succeed in amusing and entertaining and moving a great many of you. That's a part of the truth, just as the Herb Fuller that I found in these last 4 days is also a part of the truth. And the truth is always worth hearing, no matter how complex or contradictory it may sound. So, here's my story. It started on a Tuesday. It was a Tuesday like.